Brad, how are you, buddy?
I'm good, brother. How you doing?
Sorry we're running a little bit behind today. All right, so Brad Meltzer was just on the show recently for writing a new nonfiction book. This is basically what he is known for, is writing his nonfiction novels and then writing the kids' books that we talk about. But now this is something that's pretty special. At what point does the University of Michigan ask you to be the commencement speaker? Did they say, look, your son is here, he's graduating, will you do this? Or had they been after you before?
No, they'd never been after me. You have to get nominated, and I got nominated. And usually, the commencement speaker in an election year is the president of the United States.
Oh, wow!
And they picked me, and I went to my son and I said, I'm going to be your graduation speaker. I wanted to see. I didn't want to take the limelight from him, so I wanted to make sure he was okay with it. And his first reaction was, "You? That's the best." He says that's the best you can get. He goes, "Why didn't they pick Tom Brady?" Because I went to Michigan. Tom Brady went to Michigan. Then he says this. You can't make it up. He says, "It's like a 13th seed winning March Madness."
Oh.
And so that's literally how I started my speech. I was like, on behalf of the 13th seed, like here I am. And then, not joking, 30 seconds later, he goes, "This is going to be awesome." And that's when I knew, like, there were 70,000 people in Michigan Stadium that day when I gave this graduation address.
No, I have to tell you,
my
son just graduated from high school, and I think he would be mortified if I don't even think they ever want me to go to school for Bring Your Father to School Day or like career day or something. So maybe at that age, it's a little bit different. Certainly your son is proud of the work you've done. And but all eyes are on him now, because if you blow it, it's on him.
Oh, 100. In fact, it depends on your kid. Like, we asked my daughter, who's in college now, and I said, we knew what the answer was going to be. We're like, "Would you like me to do your commencement?" She said, "Absolutely not. If they ask you, say no."
It's so awful. Kids are such dicks, man. They really are, but that's how they really feel.
Well, the thing that was crazy is my daughter, when I was done with the speech, then was like, "Hey, could you maybe think about doing mine?" Because she wanted to see if I was going to blow it.
Right.
And what I did is, listen, I talked to all my friends about what they remember from their commencement address. You know what they remember? Nothing.
No.
Nobody remembers anything. So the only thing I remember from mine is that it was the year Desmond Howard graduated Michigan. He won the Heisman Trophy that year,
Yep.
The famous football player. And the speaker said, "Hey, is Desmond Howard in the stands?" And sure enough, Desmond Howard stood up, and he was a fellow graduate. He was like 10 rows in front of me just by happenstance. And I remember thinking, like, there's someone, that's excellence.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's what I'm going to, I remembered a memory. So when I gave my speech was about magic. And when you talk to magicians, there are only 4 types of magic tricks. There's 1, you make something appear.
Mm-hmm.
2, you make something disappear. 3, you make 2 things switch places. And 4 is you got to take one thing and turn it into something else, which is the hardest trick of all, transformation.
Right.
And I go through all the things, what you have to make appear and disappear and all these things. And at the end of the speech, I said, and by the way, magic is never something you do for yourself. It's something you do for other people. And I remember when Desmond Howard stood up at my graduation 30 years ago. So let's do one more magic trick, people. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome my friend Desmond Howard. And Desmond Howard, 30 years later, comes out on the stage with me. And 70,000 people go bananas. And then we bring out J.J. McCarthy and Blake Corum, who won the national championship. And it was like standing in a hurricane. And it was, what I wanted to do an actual magic trick. And when the speech was done, all these people were writing, "Can I have the text of that speech? I want to share that with my son, my daughter, my niece, my nephew." People were tracking my sister down where she lived in New York. They're like, "I think that's your brother we saw in the speech. Can we get the text?" I know you a long time. I've been doing this 25 years. No one's ever asked me for the text of anything I ever said. And so the publisher started calling, and they said, "You know what, we should turn this into a book." And so Make Magic officially comes out today, and we took the commencement address and turned it into a book for people. We all need some magic in our lives right now.
Did you cry while preparing this at all?
Oh, I cry every time I would practice it.
Yeah.
I would cry for some part about my son.
Yeah.
What I wasn't prepared for is I got to the part, the third magic trick is taking one thing and turning it into something else. And there I said, let's talk about empathy. Because that's what empathy is, right? It's taking something, you're putting yourself in someone else's shoes.
Right.
And what I said is that, cruelty and venom aren't signs of strength Right now, cruelty and venom are so popular in our culture, but they're not signs of strength. Cruelty and venom are signs of weakness and petty insecurity. And what takes strength is putting yourself in someone else's shoes and feeling empathy. And I said, right now, I wish my parents were alive today to see that we're okay. Every person in the stadium has someone who they wish was with them today. And I feel, Mike, in that moment, I wasn't feeling for my son anymore, but I was missing my parents. And I felt all the empathy from thousands of parents coming at me. And that's, you can see when you watch the speech on YouTube, that's where I just almost lose it. I'm like, do not cry in front of 70,000 people, or my kid will kill me.
Yeah, that's true. Did your parents, I don't know when they passed away, did they get to see your success?
They did. You know, my parents were not big readers. My mom and dad, before they died, read like 6 books. They were my 6 novels. They never read a book.
They were average human beings.
They were exactly.
Yeah.
They didn't go to 4-year colleges, nothing. They were just, working, and they were busting their, everything for us. But the story that I told in the speech is when I moved to Florida, my dad lost his job, and we moved to Florida, and it was 6 of us. My mom, my dad, my sister, myself, and my 2 grandparents had to all live in my grandparents' 1-bedroom apartment. We couldn't afford anywhere to live yet. We hadn't had any savings. And everyone there was trying to get us evicted because they were all the condo commandos were like, oh, you can't have that many people living in one small space. And my grandmother's neighbor basically said, you know what? Said to us, take my apartment. I'm going to go live with a relative. You take our apartment so you can have some decency and won't be evicted.
Wow.
And it was the nicest thing anyone ever done for me. I remember her name back then was Mercy, but I always heard it as Mercy.
Right.
And make no mistake, mercy and kindness is what this woman showed us. And when I told that story, that's where I felt all that love of my parents kind of coming right back at me.
That's so interesting. I know you're pressed for time. I have given the commencement speech at a college twice before, and I think one time was a disaster. And then they brought me back to the same school because I didn't know what it was. I didn't really quite, and I was young, and it was a technical college. I don't know why they were asking me to do it. And they said, just go and tell your story. I was like, okay. So I'm up there for probably like a half hour just rambling on. And then they said, hey, let's do it again next year. And I said,
tighten it up.
Yeah. And they actually didn't say anything to me about it. And then I went out there and did it again. They were like, you killed it this year. And I'm like, well, then I screwed it up first year, But anyway, it's a very difficult thing to do because you want to leave a mark on these kids, and you want them to take this and really reflect on it and learn something from it. And clearly, this hit home. I mean, with the amount of people that were clamoring for the text and the fact that it's become a book now, I think this is it shows that you were really successful.
No, I hope so, and I love you for that. I mean, but you understand, right? It's hard to understand what a tricky job it is, and I think one of the things that the speech went viral, and one of the stories that kind of got passed around was the second magic trick is about what you have to make disappear.
Yeah, and
I said, you got to make fear disappear. But I said, and I told this story when I was growing up in Florida. I worked at the Haagen-Dazs in the Aventura Mall. and this one day, this woman comes up, she starts snapping her fingers at me, saying, you got to serve me. And I was like, ma'am, you know what? I'll be right with you in a moment. She's like, no, you got to serve me now. And I said, you know what, ma'am, you're being rude. I'm not going to serve you. Mm-hmm. And she starts screaming at me, you're going to be working at this miserable ice cream store for the rest of your miserable life. And I said, ma'am, if I am working here for the rest of my miserable life, you're still never getting any ice cream. and for years, I used to laugh at that story and be like, oh, she never even bothered me. Mm. But I finally, as I was writing it, I realized I had to admit, it did bother me.
Yeah.
It really bothered me because it made me feel small. My dad struggled with money his whole life. I didn't want to have my dad's life. And I realized what you have to make, don't get rid of your fear, but you got to use it. You got to harness it, right? Don't vanquish your critics. Prove them wrong. Use it as rocket fuel. And when you do, man, get out of the way.
Oh, Brad,
and I think resonates with people.
We're such different people. Also, I'm 4 times your size, but I was a bouncer, and whenever I'd have to say anything to anybody, they'd go, listen here, I'm not going to let some $5 an hour bouncer. And I go, oh, yeah, you are. And I'd lock them up and throw them out, right? That was the one thing I could physically remove people where you can't do that at Haagen-Dazs. The book about the speech, the text available at bradmeltzer.com/nonfiction/make magic. I'm sure you will find it if you just Google Brad Meltzer and Make Magic. Congratulations on another successful, not only speech, but now another book for you.
No, thank you. And listen, anyone who needs some magic in their lives, even for yourself, or if you have a graduate, it's a graduate, sure, but we all right now, the world just seems upside down. We all need some magic in our lives. So this is the perfect gift. And Make Magic is maybe one of my favorite things I've ever written. So thank you for letting me come on and share a little magic with everyone.
Of course, buddy. Very proud of you. Congratulations.
Thanks, brother.
Thanks, man. Have a good day. There you go. Brad Meltzer. My only friend that's an author.
Mm-hmm.
I know other people that have written books, but he's my only friend that's an author.
Yeah.
Yeah.